Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm Will Dragon, and this is Suzerain, and I am unbelievably happy to be playing this game. At the end of the last episode, we are in growth, ladies and gentlemen. We have projected economic growth. The country may finally be turning around, and our government budget went up by 1, and by that I mean it went from minus 17 to minus 16, all on its own. Could we actually drag this country out of bad times? Who knows? Let's have a look at our news. Heartbreak for FC Enrica as FC Gelsord secures back-to-back league titles. Like we've had that a couple of times. World ignores the Bludish plight. Barred from high-paying jobs, discouraged from attending university, spat on in the streets. Where is the outrage against Swordland's relentless oppression of the Bloods? This is, of course, the Radical, and I would rather burn it than read it. Valgish man shot after burning Agnolian flag. The Houseland protests that started against the governor who was appointed by the Agnolian government are continuing without slowing down. After the supportive statements by Chancellor Emmerich Hegel, the Valgish protesters were assembled in front of the governor's office in Halseyport and waved Vagslandian flags. And then we have a bit of news over here in Suzerain, BFF recruitment. It was reported that in the villages around Suzerain, a group of BFF missionaries are seeking to recruit militants to fight for the BFF. Governor Brown reported that the Gendarmerie forces in the area are now actively working towards eliminating the threat. I cannot wait till we get the special zone revoked and I get to actually deal with that problem. In Hulsord, we have a call from Marcel Coronti. I was in my office looking through the agenda for the upcoming meeting at the Ministry of Economy. The meeting was going to be about the ownership of the Big Four, the 4 largest companies in Swordland. Heart of Swordland, which is media mostly, Bergia Steel, that should be self-explained, the Swordish State Corporation, which is a construction company, and Ned Mining Group. Okay. Some of these companies were controlled in part or entirely by the state. The others were mostly or completely privatized. I had the power to change that. The phone rang and I put down the agenda. And I picked up the phone. Who would have thought? Greetings, Mr. President. It has been a while, hasn't it? Let me try to remember. When was the last time we had a chat? Oh, I remember. It was in Conriat when you refused my gracious offer. Why did you call me? You probably know why I'm calling. It's because of the upcoming ownership meeting. But before we move on to that, he paused for a few seconds. Out of goodwill, I will share a key piece of information. The Lotherberg Group has contingency plans if you decide to do anything rash that would disrupt their empires. You can't blame them, can you? Imagine someone trying to take your authority and personal wealth away without your consent. I don't see why we should be enemies. Exactly. If everyone plays their cards right, it would all be fine. Now, let's talk about those cards. Since the start of your campaign, you've wisely committed to a market economy. Judging by that, I am sure you are looking into privatizing some of the companies that are currently state-owned. I believe, therefore, that privatizing both Nedham Mining Group and the Swordish State Corporation would be in both of our interests. After all, I am considering buying stocks in both companies. I will see what I can do. Think about it this way. It is another step forward in strengthening our economy. Please at least think about it. He cleared his throat. I will be blunt. Mr. Tusk is unfit to be the spokesperson for the Lotherberg Group. His archaic thinking has only preserved the status quo that benefits himself and precious few others. It is high time something changed. Who do you have in mind to replace him? Who do you think? Me, of course. I just wanted him to say it. Here is what I propose, a win-win situation. If you promise me a majority of shares from the privatization, he would lose considerable power, which means I could take over. If I take over with your help, I will be forever indebted to you and support you in all your goals, be they re-election or something more. How does that sound? I'll have to think about it. Just think about it, that's all I'm asking. Well then. I have taken up enough of your time today. This has been a productive call. Thank you for your time, Mr. President. Goodbye, Mr. Coronti. After a couple of minutes, I went back to reviewing the agenda. trying to stay right down the middle and not make any promises either way. Why? Because I don't know if I agree with him or not yet. Increased support for Bludish rights. Public opinion in cities like Lakavan, known for their significant middle-class liberal population, is undergoing a notable shift with a surge in support for Bludish rights. The case of Ish Val Urson has struck a chord with many individuals, leading to a growing sense of empathy and solidarity. A massive crowd have gathered in Suzerain to condemn President Rain for his recent statements defending the solist interpretation of citizens' rights. The people are calling for actual changes to be made to the constitution that recognizes the Bludish people and their culture. They believe that the president's defense of the constitution is a clear indication that the government has no intention of introducing significant reforms. Border police have reported an increased number of arrests as Bludish and Wessex refugees attempt to enter the country from Welland without legal documents. However, due to our relaxed immigration policy, a large majority of skilled and educated workers had been accepted. However, it is unsure if they have had any history of crime and violence. Rising energy prices severely impact local economy. I could have sworn we've dealt with rising energy prices. We still have growth. Supreme Court holds Governor Braun accountable. In a groundbreaking ruling, the Supreme Court has charged Governor Braun for his implementation of the divisive resettlement order in the special zone of Bergia, targeting individuals referred to as swords of different blood. The court's decision reinforces the principle that equality and justice must prevail, even at the highest levels of power. Governor Braun's removal from office and the accompanying fine demonstrate the court's commitment to upholding the rule of law and safeguarding the rights of all citizens. In a testament to the constitutional process, the court has appointed Herbert Krul, a seasoned member of the NFP, as the acting governor until the end of the term. While the court ruled in favor of Ishval Urson's argument regarding discrimination, it rightfully recognized that the Constitution already guarantees equal rights for all, rejecting his arguments about the conflicts within the Constitution. The ruling emphasizes the importance of respecting the constitutional framework that safeguards individual freedom. As Herbert Krul assumes office, it is crucial to support his leadership and provide a conducive environment for the special zone of Bergia to thrive. Interesting. Community in Suzerain expresses outrage and demands meaningful reform. As a celebratory gathering soon transformed into peaceful protests against the new governor, Herbert Krul, with demonstrators demanding comprehensive reforms and reparations for past injustices. Central to the protest is the demand for the resignation of Chief Justice Hawker, as the Bludish community perceives a lack of empathy and understanding from the highest levels of the judiciary. Bludish Democrats condemn President Rain. Massive crowd descended upon the streets of Suzerain. Also released a statement criticizing the government and president, saying the people, driven by a shared sense of frustration and marginalization, demand tangible changes to the constitution that genuinely recognize and embrace the rich Bludish heritage and culture. Supreme Court decision falls short of justice again. Arcasian-Quinali relations, a fresh chapter, including a critical dispute resolution between Quinal and Arcasian private military companies. Arcasian and Quinal have successfully restored their diplomatic relations, marking a significant milestone in global geopolitics. Okay. In Holsword, Supreme Court has charged Governor Braun for enacting the resettlement order. As a replacement for the governor, Supreme Court ruled in extraordinary circumstances as this: the deputy of the governor shall assume duty until the end of the term, instead of president appointing a new governor. Yeah, that might not go too well. If it's just his deputy that's assuming command, you know, he's been the deputy to all of these bad decisions. Is that really how we want this to go? Is it? Come on, guys. Requested meeting of Lucian Gallade. He arrived on time as usual and took his seat right across from me. Good morning, Mr. President. Lucian had dark circles below his eyes. The plethora of political developments must have been weighing even on a workaholic like him. You look a bit tired. Are you getting enough sleep? I am trying to, sir. Don't push yourself too much. I will try not to. I must say you don't look much better. I looked at myself in a small hand mirror. Similar circles were beneath my eyes as well. I booked some of your time to pre-plan for today's meeting at the Ministry of Economy. But before going into the economic direction, I want to give you a short status update. After you and Mr. Kibben made your statement in support of Solist constitutionalism, the Supreme Court prioritized the case and quickly announced a verdict. It was very clever of you to use solism against them. They couldn't afford to look like hypocrites, so they must have moved on it very quickly. The court ruled that Felix Braun is to be relieved from his position as governor for abusing his powers to discriminate against Swordish citizens. He is banned from serving in any political position in the future and will be charged with a fine of 5 million Swordish Ren. The resettlement policies of Bergia are ruled to be unconstitutional and have been revoked. However, the court has also rejected Ursun's arguments about the constitution, ruling that all citizens of Swordland are swords regardless of ethnicity and are completely equal before the law. The results received a mixed response from the Bludish community. Activists, radicals, and BFF sympathizers have condemned the ruling. However, the majority seems to recognize that justice has been served. Everything. Maybe Sol wasn't so wrong about his policies. Do you have any idea on how we proceed? I don't think there's anything we need to do at this moment, sir. There is one more important detail. The seat of Governor of Bergia must be filled. Normally, the President appoints the Governor of the Special Zone directly. I'm afraid, despite Mrs. Morgner's protests, the court decided to take a completely different route on this. Mr. Hawke argued that a premature departure of a governor during their term is an exceptional case. They ruled that the deputy of Governor Bronn will assume his duty until the end of the term. Mr. Keebener might have played you, unfortunately. The deputy in question, Mr. Krul, is a member of the NFP. I'm afraid the court delivered Bergia straight into the NFP's hands. This is very bad news. What do we do now? There's nothing we can do about it, sir. Luckily, Mr. Krul will not be able to resume any of his predecessor's unconstitutional activities. Of course, giving such a powerful position to a far-right nationalist is still very concerning. Luckily, Miss Graff is already working on the revocation of the special zone in Bergia. We may still be able to get rid of Mr. Krul that way. It would likely be ready after the vote for the amendments. You'd be free to enact it then. Tell her I'm grateful for her work on this. Of course, sir. He took a look at his watch. For now, let's return back to the real reason we are here, our economic direction. We need to be cautious. Any grand plans about the economy also heavily influence our political standing. We would be changing our relationships with the old guard and oligarchs and the opposition. As you know, this meeting will give you the opportunity to alter the ownership of the Big Four, the largest corporations in all of Swordland. We can start the process of nationalization or privatization, or we can just keep the status quo. Again, I remind you that any changes will tip an already fragile balance. I personally think we should stay out of this and keep things as they are. There is no need to make new political enemies at this stage in our term, but ultimately the decision is yours. What are you leaning towards? How should we move? Do I not get to hear some information? Like, I mean, I'm thinking nationalize, but is that going to go and cost me loads of money? Because I don't have any. So that's a bit of a problem. What is your intention? To run without my input as president, the oligarchs must submit to me. It's true that more control we have, the better. Your administration still bears responsibility if we let the oligarchs determine the course of the country. I have to remind you that nationalization goes against your initial plan for market economy. We might lose support because of it. Lucian took a note in his notebook. I received a report from the Ministry of Economy that may impact your decision. Unfortunately, we have missed our government budget targets for the current quarter. Yep. To change the ownership of important assets could help us generate much needed resources to further improve economic development before the next election. It's just something to consider, as is our relationship with the oligarchs. We might be aiming for nationalization, but we need to remember that they only care about their own profits. Unfortunately, we aren't on good terms with them. This situation has been obstructing some of our efforts in the economic recovery. If our nationalization plan hurts their assets too much, we may end up at war with the men who control much of the economy. Perhaps we can avoid confrontation. Yet, that's the only kind of nationalization they'd accept. I am sure that Tusk will have further requests afterwards, though. Some of my connections indicate that there seems to be a contest for the leadership in the Lotharberg group. It looks like Marcel Coronti is making moves to become the key figure. Coronti probably wants his father's seat as the head of the group, and Tusk doesn't want to let go. Significant power struggle, considering these are the heads of Swordland's two largest private corporations. Because we are going down the path of nationalization, we will have the power to tip the balance towards either side. Since you have already made your decision to nationalize, you need to be decisive in your follow-up actions. Did Marcel or Tusk contact you? I received a call from Marcel. What did he ask for? He wanted me to make a deal. And then? I said I'd think about it. Very well. Was that all he wanted? Shares from privatization to lower Tusk's influence. As I expected, this internal conflict among the oligarchs puts us in an interesting position. Our relationship with Tusk hasn't been good so far. Any move we make now has to be calculated and thought through. Very well then, it's almost time. I will inform Mr. Hall of your decision, and he will make the necessary preparations to... No, I didn't want that to be... Damn it, I didn't want that to be my final decision. I didn't even get any information. I must get back to work now. See you at the next meeting. Thank you for your time, sir. Flippin' heck. Alright, well, that's gone and happened. We have a new situation. Well, what's our situation? Corruption tackled. Successful implementation of successful anti-corruption policies has led to a significant reduction in illegal activities, thereby improving the efficiency of the system and strengthening the rule of law in Swordland. The government's effort to combat corruption have resulted in the prosecution of high-profile corrupt individuals, sending a strong message to others who may be tempted to engage in such activities. Increased support for Bludish rights outside of Bergia. Yep. The new governor of Bergia, Herbert Krul. Not a good look. Not a good look. WPB condemns Supreme Court decision. Decision of Supreme Court in the Suzerain case, declaring it a grave setback for justice and equality. Walker's capitalism versus Devereux's reform. Unfolds, Charles Devereux of Reformist Union Party emerged as a formidable challenger to President Dwight Walker. Devereux presented a vision divergent from Walker's staunch Arcasian capitalism. He argued for a more balanced approach between the public and private sectors, suggesting that unchecked privatization and deregulation could breed systematic disparities. Tensions keep rising in the Marquian Sea. According to the reports from Agnolia government, the Vaxlandian fleet, which has been patrolling the Marquian Sea, was directly responsible for the disappearance of 2 fishing vessels, a drilling ship and an oil tanker that belonged to Agnolia. Prime Minister Van Horten called the Alliance of Nations to investigate the incidents. He condemned Chancellor Hegel in his speech yesterday, saying the Chancellor is trying to imprison us in our homes with his show of strength, but he should know Agnolians are not scared. Well, we could potentially have war brewing, that'll be fun. Contact and Security Pact, marking a significant leap in its surveillance capabilities, has successfully launched and authorized its first 3 spy satellites. Arvery up the top. Ooh, 3/4 finished. The Houseland Island has been a disputed territory for many years between Agnolia and Valgland, with Swordland standing on the sideline. Valgland's increased navy activities in the Marquian Sea are heightening a standoff between the 2 nations and sharpening their rivalry for each other. Mixed reaction and protest against Supreme Court decision. According to the reports, the British people living in the city of Suzerain are outraged by the Supreme Court ruling. Despite celebrations of Governor Braun's dismissal taking place on the streets for hours, many are expressing skepticism and frustration towards the government's inability to fully recognize and address the systematic discrimination they face. They soon turned to protest, with demonstrations calling for more comprehensive reform and reparations for past injustices. Yeah, I get that. Ribble. According to intelligence reports, several leaders of the British Bludish Freedom Front held a secret gathering in Ribble following the Supreme Court's decision to reject Urson's arguments about the racism of the Constitution, reiterating their commitment to Solism. Following the meeting, the BFF released a statement rejecting the Solis Constitution and threatening to launch attacks against President Rain and Kisaro Kibana. Herbert Krul assumes office. Following the charges and removal of former Governor Braun from his position, Krul, a seasoned politician from the NFP who served as a deputy to Felix Braun, has promised to work towards ensuring that the special zone remains stable and peaceful. He has called on the people of Bergia to cooperate with him in bringing about positive changes to the region. Krul has also emphasized his commitment to upholding the Constitution and respecting the rights of all swords, regardless of their ethnicity or background. Interesting. WPB condemns the Supreme Court. Argued the Supreme Court is further perpetuating the marginalization of Bludish people and disregarding their legitimate demands for justice and equal rights. They called for a comprehensive review of the justice system to ensure fair treatment and equal opportunities for all citizens. But if you're a citizen, you're a sword. If you're a sword, you have equal rights. Bludish or not does not come into it. So if you want equal rights, You are a sword, and you will all be treated the same. Don't know what else more they can ask. Ownership changes of major corporations. Assistants took our coats and showed us into the meeting room where Simon, Edith, Gus, and Mikael were waiting. As soon as I entered, the chatter stopped and they stood up. After a few pleasantries, everyone but Simon took their seats. He opened his briefcase, produced a folder, and proceeded to go over some of the documents. Greetings everyone, welcome to the Ministry of Economy. Without further ado, we are here today to discuss our economic move towards nationalization. Both Mikael and Edith had their arms crossed and frowns on their faces. They were listening intently. Mr. President, before you arrived, certain individuals in this room were voicing their opinion against a nationalization plan, especially since we were initially going down the path of a market economy. But as I understand it, your decision has already been made. Which certain individuals were those? Me and Edith, Mr. President. I'm very much against a nationalization plan. And why is that? It's simple, really. Nationalization could provide an improvement in terms of our economic development in the next year or two. But in the long term, you are losing people's trust. Without trust, there can be little trade, especially if the government excessively nationalizes entire industries. Besides, it will cost us a proportional amount of government budget to nationalize. Are you saying that the state of Swordland is untrustworthy? No, of course it is trustworthy. That is not my point. Don't forget whom you are speaking with. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, shall we? Mr. Hull, please continue. Let's move on how we can go about implementing a nationalization plan, Mr. President. He handed me and everyone else in the room 2 neat stacks of documents. Please turn to page 14. As you can see on the document, the first corporation up for discussion is the Heart of Swordland. Led by fledgling CEO Marcel Coronti, HOS has recently observed a boost in their revenue. They control many media organizations across Swordland. It is possible to see their imprint everywhere from newspaper stands to convenience stores. In fact, they own more than half of the media products in the country. We all know how much of an effect media has on politics. That is the reason I think if we are to nationalize any corporation, HOS should be our target. I must add that I myself am against full nationalization, any of these companies in principle. However, we could partially move the ownership of HOS to the state, gaining access to their income to help end the recession and provide for our citizens. I am inclined to agree with you from a political perspective. However, if we are going to nationalize HOS, I think we should go all the way and fully move its ownership to the state. What about a majority share? I believe this is the way to go. We would have board control of HOS and supplementary funds for our government projects. It's a win-win situation. We would still be making an enemy out of Marcel Coronti. He wouldn't be as powerful, of course, but I believe it's safer to move him off the chessboard entirely. They'd be disastrous, is what they would be. Thousands of assets belonging to Marcel Coronti would now belong to the state. This would scare off many investors and most likely stop new money from coming in. I'm fully against nationalizing any company, but if you insist on nationalizing something regardless, I would pick HOS. Why is that? Marcel Coronti is growing too powerful too fast. The next thing you know, we could even have control over the state. He could even have control over the state newspapers. Our next option. 37. Bergier Steel. It is the largest private corporation in the Big Four and therefore the largest in Swordland. It has been at the helm of steel manufacturing for many years. It is led by current CEO and Lotharberg spokesman Walter Tusk. I believe all of us in the room are familiar with him in one way or another. What can I say? They have been widely successful since their founding. They have achieved renown not only in Swordland but worldwide. I believe we shouldn't attempt to break something that is already working. I am against the nationalization of Bergier Steel in any capacity. Not to mention, any amount of nationalization would be disastrous for both Bergier Steel and Swordland. Much of our steel trade is reliant on their manufacturing capabilities. Any sudden change there would be like throwing a screwdriver in a working engine. No matter what, we should refrain from nationalizing them. It could result in an economic crisis. I don't have so strong an opinion, but I will say that nationalizing both Bergier Steel and HOS would be quite unwise. Let's move on. Read all of Simon's documents once more, then flipped to the last page. It was time to make some decisions. Tens of billions of SR, they involved in the media. What's the current level? Is this the current level, I assume? Minority state-owned, majority state-owned, full nationalization, fully privately owned. Okay, so these are the only two. The two largest private corporations which play a key role in the Swordish economy. It's not telling me costs though. Like this is like giving me internal palpitations. I feel like I've not been given information to actually make presidential decisions here. Like there's a whole country relying on me, people, and you're not giving me what I need to know. I'm not going to touch any of them. It's just. I can't just ignore them both. I don't know. Why? No, I'm not sure about my decision at all. Of the big four, I only had two options. It's the path we are taking. Although I am very much against the nationalization of any company, I'm glad you at least chose to leave Bergier Steel alone. I'd be very happy with this decision. For sure. This has been a fruitful meeting. I agree. Now let's look into implementing these changes. Before we start that discussion, I'm afraid Edith and I will have to leave. We need to report the outcome to our companies to make sure we can mitigate the impact. They gathered their belongings and left the room hurriedly. That'll be it for today then. I know everyone has very busy schedules. Thank you all for coming. Good work, everyone. Put documents in my suitcase and left the room with Lucian. Okay, it only went down by 1. If that's the only impact I'm gonna get, I'm okay with it. Seriously, like... It's like, how much is it going to cost me? Like, what's going on? Like, oh, which direction would you like to go? It's like, I don't know. What are the consequences, Lucian? Unified Education Language Act. To strengthen national unity and facilitate consistent, comprehensive learning across Swordland. Stipulates that all education institutions in Swordland are required to conduct their teaching in the country's official language, except in the case of foreign language instructions. To offer courses in any language other than Swordis, institutions must obtain explicit approval from the Ministry of Education. Any universities, technical colleges, or other educational institutions found to be non-compliant will face a temporary suspension of the operation until they apply for and receive the necessary approval. Section 2 underscores the enforcement of the Act. Schools found to be in violation of these guidelines may face penalties, which may include reduction or withdrawal of funding. In several cases or cases of persistent non-compliance, total shutdowns may be enforced. This enforcement mechanism reinforces the commitment to a unified language policy, ensuring a cohesive educational experience across the nation. I want that to happen. Now, this is not going to be popular with anybody in any of the Bluedish people. Education Unification Act. Situations. Oppression of the Bluedish people. By Swordish government are clearly designed to oppress the Bluedish population in the country, causing civil strife and institutionalized racism. Not really. Again, this is Swordland. I don't know how to emphasize that anymore. This is Swordland, and everybody here is a sword. I did not take away their right to pray in their own language, because religion has nothing to do with the government. I won't interfere. But they have the right and the ability to work and live anywhere in Swordland, and I would love them to be able to do that. And to do that, they are going to have to be able to do their things in Swordish. That's all I'm saying. With the nationalization decision made, all that was left was for Swordland's two most prominent oligarchs to sign the paperwork. Lucian showed Marcel, Coranti, and Walter Tusk in. They sat across the table from me, leaving one empty chair between them. Walter was watching Marcel with a vile smirk on his face. Did you think you could go behind my back, boy? Come on, I wouldn't be in my position if I didn't know how to play my cards right. You still have a lot to learn, now that Daddy isn't around to hold your hand. Shut up, Walter. Gentlemen, before the conversation is derailed further, Lucian moved over to Marcel and found out the agreement papers in front of him. Here is the agreement that pertains to the nationalization of HOS and the transfer of your shares to the state. He pointed to various sections on various pages of the document. We will need to sign here, here, and here. I won't sign anything without reading it first. He started going through the papers. When he finished, he turned back to the first page and went over the whole stack again. and again and again. Is there a problem? I have to make sure I understand an agreement that takes my whole life's effort away from me. He started checking his pockets. I don't have a pen. Walter immediately produced a pen from his pocket and put it in front of Marcel with a toothy grin. He spat out a large burgundy steel symbol with the name of the company engraved on it. There you go. Marcel reluctantly signed the papers after letting out a deep sigh. My pen, please. Take your stupid pen. He turned to me, eyes blazing. You can forget about getting re-elected, Mr. President. I'll make sure it doesn't happen. Did you just threaten the president of Swordland? This is ridiculous. Know your place, little boy. Mr. President, are you just going to stay silent in the face of these blatant threats? He needs to be punished swiftly. Sure, you can't let him speak to you like that. I've launched an investigation that will uncover all of Marcel's secrets. I don't like either of these answers. I mean, that rubs it in his face. That threatens him. That gives away things that I don't want to give away. Can we not escalate things? I mean, I'm saying I'm not escalating things, but then I'm like kicking him while he's down. I mean, that's not nice. You know, how about just something like, please, the deal is done. It is what it is. You know? And estimate what he can do, President. An animal is most dangerous when he's cornered. A man like Marcel would prove difficult in the future, for sure. No, there is no need. Very well. See, Marcel, this is called graciousness and mercy. Two traits you have never had. Your words don't work on me, Tusk. Mr. President, you are being played. Mark my words, one day he will turn on you as well. I am not you, Marcel. Mr. President, Walter, I'll see you both in hell. Marcel packed his belongings and furiously exited the room, closing the door loudly. Walter followed shortly afterwards. Didn't take any more government budget, that's good. Ooh, all assignments are complete. That's fantastic. All borders and towns close to Rumburg are currently being reinforced. They've all apparently been complete. And media bias is facing a significant challenge due to the organized interference from both the state and private organizations. This interference has been aimed at controlling the narrative and shaping public opinion in favor of specific agendas. Yeah, I thought that might happen. Police launched successful raids on shops and warehouses in Avery City and Estord. Their operations are reported to confiscate more than 2,000 illegal firearms and drugs. The captain of the police force in charge of these raids has released a statement saying that the shops are from the two notorious crime families, the Skinner and the Coronelli family. Those operations were only possible due to the law enforcement budget increase. This allowed us to launch investigations of the local police, purging the corrupted ones and getting information about their networks. It appears that thanks to President Anton, law and order will soon come back to Swordland. Ah, Avery City. Interesting. I believe the nationalization of the heart of Swordland is expected to reduce the extraordinary amount of control the oligarchs have over the Swordish economy. Has been silent on the matter and refrained from making any comments thus far. CSP criticizes Rumburg and Arcasia. Issued a stark condemnation of Rumburg and the Grace network of monarchies, accusing them of attempting to reverse the trends set by the century of revolutions. Arcasia, too, found itself under CSP's lens, suspected of maintaining covert links with Rumburg. What have we got? Kingdom of Rumburg. Rumburg has informed us about an escaped whistleblower headed to Swordland. They have prematurely requested the extradition of any whistleblowers from the Rumburg, if they are to be found. Charleston Hailstone, the said whistleblower, is reported to possess highly sensitive information about a covert weapons program. Queen Beatrice Livingston's administration has demanded the immediate return of Hailstone, considering his defection as a breach of trust between the two nations. That's rich. Breach of trust, huh? Conriat. Before leaving, the Heart of Swordland's ex-CEO Marcel Coronti had released a statement titled "Freedom of the Press is Dead in Swordland." However, there was an overwhelming wave of support from within USP applauding the administration's decision. With HOS under control, public opinions are fully within our grasp. Yeah, not really what I was kind of going for, but okay. Yeah, let's get in one more situation. It's a quick drive. The Grand National Assembly for today's historic vote. Whether my attempt at changing the Constitution would end any differently than Alfonso's. I looked out the window as the noise of the city diminished and saw that we were already inside the palace complex. The complex housed the buildings of all government branches in the centre of Holsword. It was one of the biggest developments in Swordland. The Maroon Palace stood on a small hilltop surrounded by trees. We passed the palace and entered the forest that separated from the Grand National Assembly. We drove on the small road that wound through the forest. It was a warm day, so I rolled down the window. I could hear birds singing from the trees. Are you okay back there, sir? Hey, Serge, I'm okay. How are you doing? I'm as good as I can be, sir. Serge made a left turn out the forest and entered the vast garden area of the assembly. Did you know that Mr. Tarquin's soul came to Holsword this morning? I heard some politicians talking about it today. Apparently, this is the first time he's come to the city in the last 5 years. I thought he left the mainland and lived on Duru Island, never to return to politics. But they were saying he might be here to exercise his Member of Honor rights for the first time. Are you sure? Yes, sir. I overheard several men talking about it around the gardens of the assembly. Could just be rumors, of course. Do you think he's here because of today's vote? Yes, Serge, most likely. Well, I'm sure he will support you, sir. I doubt that. Serge drove inside the gates of the parkway and parked the car. We have arrived, sir. Thank you, Serge. Of course, sir. Good luck with the vote. I walked up the white stone stairs of the Grand National Assembly. The entrance looked like a temple gate from the classical era. The door opened to reveal vast corridors of wood and white stone. I joined the crowd of people who were walking slowly towards the parliamentary hall. Suddenly, I noticed Lucian emerge from the crowd of packed politicians in front of me. He looked relieved when he saw me. Ah, sir, there you are. Have you seen Vice President Vectern? He's nowhere to be found. I've just arrived here, Lucian. I hope Mr. Vectern arrives soon, too. At any rate, how about yourself? Are you ready to finally face the assembly, sir? I just hope something worrying from Serge. We'll address that later, sir. Come, we must go inside. We followed the crowd into the parliamentary hall. After we were inside, Lucian and I separated to take our assigned seats. I went up to the mezzanine overlooking the hall and sat down. I waited as the MPs took their places inside the hall one by one. After a while, I saw Gloria walk to her elevated seat at the center of the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We will shortly begin with today's agenda of the USP's proposed changes to the Constitution of Swordland. After a short while, everybody was in their seats. According to the current Constitution, constitutional amendments require a 2/3 majority in order to reach Assembly approval. If the vote succeeds, the proposal will be sent to the Supreme Court. The proposal in question includes these points. She started reading the proposal to the Assembly. First section of the changes, Article 57, is modified with the following. She continued reading the proposal, highlighting each section. Section 2, she went on, may not exercise his right to, and on. Most of the MPs seemed like they were already falling asleep. A simple majority is considered. The seat was really hurting my back. Section 4. I hereby invite. She struck her gravel down. The loud bang made some MPs jump in shock as they woke from their deep sleep. As I previously stated, it required a 2/3 majority in order to pass. You may now cast your vote. Okay, I'm quite nervous, folks. I kind of wish we'd actually save this for next episode. Like, I don't know if I want to do this. Need to stand up and stretch. I looked down at the hall from the platform I was seated on. Some assembly members immediately walked to the ballot box to cast their votes. Most of them, however, began to congregate in groups around the hall discussing the changes. Sit back down and keep watching. Some people cast their votes, but many were still walking around the hall or talking to each other. Then I noticed Kisaro Kibana approaching. He stopped below the mezzanine and looked up at me. Go down to talk to him. Mr. President, how are you feeling about the vote? I'm hoping for the best. The best outcome for this proposal is failure. I have lost my respect for you, Mr. Rain. So many problems in Swordland that must be addressed, and yet you insist on stalling us with your democratic reforms. I know you will fail, you will lose the game, and so will your entire administration. I hope to be there when it happens. Watch your words now. He abruptly turned away from me and walked towards his seat. Then I saw Lucian waving at me. He was among a group of people in the corner of the hall. I walked up to him. On my way, I bumped into Mansoon Leek. Mr. President, I'm sorry I didn't see you there. I wish you good luck with the vote. He gave me a cold stare. Excuse me. He straightened his tie and walked away. I finally reached Lucian. By now deep in conversation with another member of our party, he excused himself and turned towards me. Sir, did you vote yet? We have to be quick. What's the rush? I'll explain on the way. I signed my vote and prepared the envelope. Together, Lucian and I walked to the center of the hall to cast our votes. He kept rushing me throughout the process. Gloria bowed her head slightly in respect as she saw us vote. Lucian pulled on my arm and whispered in my ear. We may have a problem. Tarquin Sol is here. What should we do? You have to accelerate the voting process. We need everybody to vote as soon as possible. We don't know what he's capable of right now, but if assembly members see him, he might influence them against the proposal. Should I talk to him? I would advise against that right now. The assembly must focus on the vote. Any confrontation between the two of you would draw their attention away. Go and ask Gloria to speed up. I want Gloria to ask her to speed up the voting. She banged the gavel several times. The sound echoed across the room. The assembly will soon begin counting. Please cast your votes if you haven't already. The pace in the hall definitely increased. The groups dispersed and MPs began lining up at the ballot box. Suddenly, Lucian pulled me aside. Sir, what do we do? He pointed at the back of the assembly near one of the exits. I followed his finger to see Tarquin Sol sitting there. He looked much older than he had 5 years ago, but I could tell he had the same fire in him. Some MPs had already gathered around him and were chattering in awe. The assembly gradually went quiet as people started to notice Sol's presence in the hall. We have to make sure he doesn't sabotage anything. We should refrain from giving him the spotlight he expects. Maybe you can address him after the vote. I was talking back to Lucian. I spotted Kisaro Kibana walking to the back of the hall towards Tarquin Sol. He bowed in front of Sol and gave him a military salute. Seeing this, more people started to approach. Suddenly, Gloria came up behind him. Gentlemen, why don't you go back to your seats? Let's follow the procedure. Oh, by the way, we have 251 members today. As you can see, the member of honor is here. He has already cast his vote. Has he now? So, Mrs. Tory, how many votes are missing? Only a few. Albin Clavin and 3 other men approached us with envelopes in their hands. And these must be them. Good day to you, gentlemen, Madam Speaker. Good day, Mr. Clavin. I'm surprised to see you here, considering the way you ignored your own party. Don't worry, Mr. President, we are here. Relax. He smiled. He gestured at the men behind him. Let's get this over with, gentlemen. They cast their votes and walked away. Now, why don't you go back to your seats as well? Very well, we shall. We both went back to our seats. When I returned to the mezzanine, I saw Peter sitting in the chair next to mine. How are you doing? The usual. He looked at Gloria as she and her assistants counted the votes. The speaker's seat was only a few meters away from our platform. I really hope this proposal goes through. I hope so too. Let's see. He tried to get Gloria's attention by waving at her. How many votes left? Looked at Peter. She looked annoyed. 20 votes left to count. It doesn't look good for you. Oh, that's not good. Did you hear that? We are screwed. We're going to get this. Come on. Peter looked uneasy. Peter pointed at where Friend's Richter was sitting. Look at Friend's over there. I'm sure he was behind this mess. You shouldn't have trusted him. It's not over yet, Peter. Don't jump to conclusions. Well. A single bang from Gloria's gavel reverberated across the hall. Everyone fell silent. It's not looking good, folks, and I don't know if I want to know. The voting has been concluded. 110 ayes and 141 nays. Did not even gather a simple majority. Thereby, the Grand National Assembly has decisively rejected the changes to the Constitution. I felt destroyed. I lowered my head and closed my eyes for a second. God, I'm sorry. This is bad. The MPs kept shouting in the hall. Among them, I heard Friends Richter's voice. The President and the USP got what they deserved. This proposal was doomed from the start. He's just like his predecessors, enjoying the privilege of the presidency, while ignoring the responsibility that comes with it. It is time to realize that real change will only come from the real reformists. The People's Freedom and Justice Party will keep leading this movement. The reformist MPs started applauding him. Suddenly, I noticed Tarquin Sol slowly rising from his seat at the back. He seemed to be struggling and used his cane for help. He stood and gazed around the hall as all of the members of the Grand National Assembly went silent. Keep watching him. He walked out to the exit as 2 of his guards held the doors for him. Thank God he didn't do anything. Sol or no Sol, we are definitely effed. Neither the party nor the public is going to be pleased. Through Sol and the party, we were always on our own. You are right, so you think we can still survive this? If the USP abandons us, we'll form a new party. He looked at me with surprise. I'll follow you anywhere, Anton. We both looked down at the floor for a while. After regathering our thoughts, Peter and I walked out of the assembly hall. We waited for Serge by the entrance. Well then, ladies and gentlemen, dissent in the hall. My own party didn't vote for me. Friends Richter, who was a huge pusher for these reforms, didn't like it. The NFP, I am not surprised by. I was not expecting them to particularly vote for these reforms, because that's the weird thing. A lot of them were kind of against them. But it's like, if the NFP was against them, I felt the PFJP should have been for them. I don't know. I guess maybe I went so middle ground that everybody hated it. And whoever said compromise was dead. And so on that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of the episode. We've gone slightly over what I was hoping, but it was an important decision. You couldn't stop halfway through. But unfortunately, we have not managed to reform the Constitution. Yeah, I mean, I tried. It's going to have far-reaching consequences. It's definitely going to have far-reaching consequences. We're still on growth, however. Projected economic growth is growth. So, that's still good. So hopefully we can at least move away from a recession. I need to get this down. I want to get this down to single digits before too long. We'll see how that ends up going. And so, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it's a dark day for democracy in Swordland. And until we see you again, on that rather serious note, as per always, I hope that you can stay safe, happy, and healthy.